So let me tell you about my first experience with the Met. 2013, I was a new member at Calusa Pines, down in Naples, and I went to go down and play in the pro member. And I said, hey, this will be fun, pro member. First off, I made the mistake of actually trying to get a pro from my club down there to play in that, and I was quickly told, no, we provide the pros. Okay, strike one. Strike two, so I get paired with a guy by the name, you probably know, Danny Bailey. Everybody know Danny? Everybody know Danny? And the other guy named Mike Gilmore. Everybody know Mike? Over at Wingfoot? Everybody know Mike? Comes with the skull and crossbones on everything. Anyway, it was quite an introduction. Danny's making putts. I think he won the Met one year. Making putts from 50 feet. Gilmore's hitting 400-yard 3-woods. And so that was my kickoff into learning about the Met. It came with all of the accoutrement that the Met comes with, which means confidence. Some would say in my business, cockiness and arrogance, but we had a lot of fun. Johnson Wagner was there. And so for me to be back here speaking to you 12 years later is a really, really cool thing for me. All your clubs, your section, everything about it in the golf world is second to none. Gotta find my slide deck here, Kendon. Where am I? Sorry, folks. Far right. Thanks. All right, a little foreshadowing. We're all standing between lunch and a awesome round of golf. Appreciate that. And you give lobbyists 40 minutes to speak. That's pretty much just an elevator pitch for us. So I'm going to cram a ton of information in here. Let's be honest, most of the issues that align with the club industry, not the individual members of the club, not the boards, not the employees, but the issues that clubs, from a policy perspective, care about, probably lean a little bit more on the conservative side. So if I offend anyone here today, I'm only speaking what I believe to be fact and positions that the club association has taken. So if you're mad about positions, we can talk about that. I am in a bipartisan firm. I was telling Sean before, I am it's a 10-person firm. We're a nimble little place, and it is 9 Democrats and me. So who do you think's busier these days? That would be me, but it's been actually a lot of fun, and my colleagues' depression and acceptance is starting to at least fade now, almost a year later. So this is who I am. For me, not growing up in the club industry, single mom, only child, public school teacher, to work in this industry is really, really cool. And as was alluded to, the club industry is a client of mine. I'm not full-time. Joe is down presenting at Addison Reserve. I believe he had one yesterday, so he asked me to come up here and do this, which I was more than happy to do. But the thing I find the coolest about clubs are that they are aspirational for a lot of people. Some people are born into them. Some people, it was always going to happen. Some people didn't think about it, and then they were invited or asked. But clubs for me are really, really an aspirational thing, and so it's cool to be here. You'll notice Calusa Pines isn't on there anymore. COVID business was really, really good to Calusa Pines. And my move to Mississippi, which we did in 2017, subsequently also having 2 children, prevented my fun weekends of going down to Naples. I then was no longer a direct flight from Reagan to Fort Myers. I was a stop in Charlotte, a full day, and they had a wait list of 300 guys. So anyway, that's why that's not there. But I am a club member, and the common thread of all those clubs that I'm a member at is that I only live at one of them, so I don't have to be involved in governance. That is somewhat by design. Country Club of Oxford, where I live in Mississippi, is an owner of one, and so we get to make suggestions that are promptly thrown into the wasteman. So it's been, I know the work that's done by the people in this room. I know the work that's done by senior staff at Great Clubs. I know what's involved with all of it, and I wish you all well and congratulations on what you do for your clubs. It's not easy, and it's obviously a second job for many of you that are in elected positions or appointed positions. Just a quick question for me. Is anybody, there's a phenomenon happening now with respect to the South. Anyone have kids or neighbors' kids or nieces or nephews? Anybody at SEC schools right now? Anybody have kids that are going there or just graduated from there? I mean, it's amazing down there. We live there because we all end up living closer to our mothers-in-law, but we see the license plates that are there now, and they're from New York and New Jersey and Michigan and Massachusetts and California. And it's really, really cool, but my sweet southern wife, who worries constantly that scars from 175 years ago that the Yankees are coming to take things from her, I have to allay her concerns and say, sweetheart, the people that are coming here, the kids that are coming here because they want what we have. They don't want to change what we're doing down here. They see the party, they see the fun, they don't want to protest. And so anyway, it's just been I've been there now 7 years, and the dads that I've met from New York, New Jersey, Bay Area, San Diego, that are coming down there and just having a great time. And I'm going to get to a point on this later on with respect to out-migration. I mean, it's not like the kids are staying there. There aren't jobs in Mississippi for some kid that's from Westchester County. They're going to go back and go do something else, but it's really, really fun to have them down there. I want to talk a little bit about the golf ecosphere and how we lobby as golf. You may be familiar with a lot of these organizations, or some of them at least. We're not the NFL, we're not the NHL, MLB, and the NBA. These massive entities that have these resources to lobby on behalf of their leagues. I don't go out and still play football. I don't go out and still play baseball. So it's different. We're talking about lobbying a sport / hobby, and so that everyone's familiar with. A lot of members of Congress play golf or are members of clubs. And quite frankly, let's be honest, a lot of members have negative views of what private clubs are. They don't see the forest for the trees with respect to the economic engines that we provide in their districts and the employment that we provide to folks in their districts. They only see elite private clubs. And so we have a little bit of a battle to do on that front with respect to golf being elitist. We know we're in city clubs, sailing clubs, racket clubs, and otherwise. But golf is the straw that stirs the drink. So the club association, we work. We've got the tour and you've got USGA, but they focus on some larger issues or bigger, different issues, I would say, than the club association. So we've got our golf club owners, our superintendents, PGA of America, I'm sure we've got several PGA of America members in here, CMAA, Club Managers Association, I'm sure there's a lot of CMAA members in this room. We partner with them quite a bit. In fact, the National Club Association just moved into the CMAA space down in Northern Virginia, so we're now sharing space, or we are a tenant. The architects, and then of course with respect to fitness equipment, things of that nature, to the extent we all have programs like that, we work with them as well on some tax issues and some, Get America sort of healthier issues. But I mentioned how we do sometimes have to battle a negative connotation of what private clubs are. And so we have to sort of check ourselves from time to time and realize that we are not beloved. That doesn't mean we're hated, we're just not beloved. And we found that out. You find out who your friends are during tough times. We found that out during COVID. COVID was very, very instructive for us. When we went to our friends, and we went to the government, and we went to stakeholders to talk about the things that clubs needed, we were, as you probably all know, we were not allowed to accept PPP. And I believe some clubs did do so, and that's a separate matter that is playing itself out in some legal circles right now. But we didn't have the data that we thought we needed. We didn't have the relationships that we needed. And just quite frankly, most members weren't willing to go to the mattresses on behalf of the club industries. So we have been working ever since then to try to make sure that the next time something like this comes around, that the industry is ready, the industry is protected, and we have our friends, and we explain ourselves better from the economic impact that we provide, the environmental stewardship that we provide, and things of that nature. So our employee bases, all those kinds of things. But these are the groups that on a day-to-day basis work together on behalf of various federal issues. Maybe you have a super that's active, maybe you have a controller or a treasurer or somebody who's active. So, but anyway, we are down there on a daily basis working on behalf of industry. So let's talk about the here and now. We are in the shutdown. We all know that, so I got to get this part out of the way. So you've got, let's see on the left there, you've got an evangelical from Benton, Louisiana. You've got a self-described hillbilly, a Christian conservative basketball star from Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and then two guys from Brooklyn. What could go wrong, right? Throw in a president born in Queens of New York, and you wonder, what do these guys have to talk about? Well, that's part of the problem. The great Jon Stewart recently described Chuck Schumer as a human flat tire, which I thought was his words, not mine. But to the extent the Democratic Party is dug in, and to the extent the Republican Party is dug in, this is one like I've never seen before, in that everyone pretty much agrees or thinks that they're correct. And usually when we have a shutdown, it's Republicans fighting amongst themselves. And that is not happening this time, at least not yet. You usually have very, very, very far-right fiscal conservatives arguing with the more mainstream, lack of a better word, country club Republicans about how much money we're going to spend at the government level, at the federal government level. That is not the case this time around. As you know, we're fighting over the ACA Obamacare subsidies. And one of the things, the phenomenon that's happened here is that the adage is, if you're explaining, you're losing. And you probably know that from some board votes or all club votes or committee votes or things like that. If you're explaining, you're losing. And I think early on, Republicans were a little worried they were going to have to explain why they were opposing these subsidies, but that really hasn't really happened yet. And on the Democratic side, I think they've struggled a little bit to sort of explain why it is that they won't provide 5 more votes in the Senate to get the government reopened. If you follow politics, you know the beating that Senator Schumer took 5 months ago. When the government was about to shut down, he voted for the continuing resolution, and he got obliterated from his far left, which also seems to be headquartered in Brooklyn. So it's quite the it's quite the ecosystem right now. My nominees from Brooklyn, everything's about Brooklyn right now, at least on the Democratic Party side. You saw yesterday that the AFG, the big union for federal employees, did finally come out and say, hey, it's time to end this, we need people to get paid. That was choreographed, so I don't think that came as a surprise to their supporters on the Democratic side, but I don't think we're going to see anything break on the government shutdown until after next Tuesday's election, or a week from today. But let's talk about a few of the things that just quickly that are happening this week. You've heard about air traffic controllers, the military, things like that. On Tuesday and Thursday, many civilian federal employees will miss their first full paychecks, although some did miss them last Friday. Members of the military will miss their first paycheck on Friday. Importantly, House of Representatives staffers also don't get paid for the first time this Friday. Saturday, funding for supplemental nutrition assistance program, basically the food programs for our needy folks. They dry up on Saturday, and November 1, there won't be funding for them. That also includes Head Start, WIC, things like that. And maybe the folks in this room aren't affected by that, but certainly your employees are in some cases. And so while we, again, as a club association, don't necessarily lobby on things that affect our individual members or our individual employees, it's something I'm sure that many of you are sort of are thinking about on behalf of your employees. Immigration also probably being something in that space. There's also something called Essential Air Service, subsidizes airline service to small rural communities. That should run out of money over the weekend as well. So a lot of fruit in this stew, and it's got a very, very different feel. Yesterday's news from the union was a big part of the news, but it didn't just completely say, okay, we fold. I mean, the Democratic Party, the leaders in the House and the Senate knew it was coming. The AFGE told them it was coming. They said, look, on behalf of our union, we have to do this. And I think everybody understood that. But I don't think anything happens until after the 4th. There's a belief on the Democratic side, at least from my colleagues' standpoint, point of view, that if Democrats were to cave now, that could suppress turnout on Tuesday, kind of deflate them. And so in states like New Jersey and Virginia that have off-year elections coming up, big gubernatorial races, there's a concern about letting the air out of the balloon on the Democratic side before the November 4 election. Let's talk about what it means to us. Not a ton. There may be fewer OSHA inspectors walking around. Maybe if you were waiting on EPA to give you some sort of feedback or approval, environmental assessment for some type of a CapEx project, they may be slow to return calls. If you've got a really big project, you're working maybe with the Army Corps, they are going to be a little slower to respond. But for the most part, I don't feel, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I'd love to hear it, raise your hand if there are problems right now with the shutdown affecting the club. Maybe affecting your business, but again, the club association represents the clubs as represented by the general managers. So it doesn't mean a whole lot, but I think most of you are seeing on a daily basis. We are into day 26, 27 of it, and so like I said, it would only be on the enforcement side. We all know that those organizations exist for a reason, but sometimes when they take a little break and don't darken your door, it's okay. For this area, you know the president. You know how he plays hardball. You know how he likes to twist the knife a little bit. So the funding that he is targeting, or some of the funding that's being slowed, is in this area. He would love nothing more than to go to New York, San Francisco, Chicago, and LA, and stop paying for things. And potentially, if those payments are delayed long enough, then you start to have people that question whether or not it's really, really necessary. So this is some of the stuff that's sort of on pause right here in this area, and this is just kind of part of it. But this president, it can be particularly poignant, vicious, some might say. And then obviously we all fly, we all travel. It's about to become Florida season for many of us, and so we really would like to get a lot of this done before Thanksgiving, before we all start flying south for fun weekends or for 6 months in a day. On the immigration side, this is an interesting one. It's a tough one. Your employees, maybe your grounds crew, people like that, are being affected, maybe not directly, but certainly people they know, certainly their communities are being affected. Something that my clubs have thought about and talked about, but not really in a position to take a firm sort of activist position on. The Trump administration has supported, does everybody use 2Bs? Does anybody use 2Bs? All right, I see a couple of hands going up. Good. If we don't, I was just going to skip it. But if you use 2Bs, you know, we have the allotment every year. And this is building towards, no one has really been able to figure out whether or not the president's clubs use 2Bs or not. We like to think that they do, thank you for that, an acknowledgement that they do. So a lot of these issues, as you might expect, whenever we have a large federal issue, we automatically think about, okay, Trump's clubs. How might they be affected by this? And is his club manager going to tell him or Eric and then tell him and say, hey, this Waters of the United States thing is really, really stupid. Or hey, we need 2 Bs, we need people to work. And so we always sort of in the back of our mind think we've got an ace in the hole sitting in the Oval Office, but he's been a little, I mean, he plays a lot of golf, obviously, but he doesn't talk about really the issues affecting the golf industry. But I think one point that is probably pretty obvious to this group is that when the administration switched from President Biden to President Trump, I don't know that you could find an industry that was more affected in a 180-degree way than our industry. I mean, everything flipped. Environmental, labor, tax. Now, immigration is a different story. That flipped in a different way. But the president still knows after this first year sort of disruption of enforcement and deportations, he is hearing loudly and clearly from industry that we need 2 Bs. The agricultural industry, farmers, ranchers, large farming operations, the seafood industry, club industry, resorts, everything in those nations needs more 2 Bs, we need more workers, and we have to figure out a way to let these people into the country for a period of time to do the work. Now, you may have heard from your superintendent, I can't get people because the landscapers take them, the full-time landscapers, and they're taking them for 11 months. The program was never supposed to last where you have somebody here for 11 months, they go home for Christmas and they come back for 11 months. It wasn't supposed to work that way. And true, really far-right conservatives concerned about immigration and concerned about people coming here and having babies along the lines of that, sending all the money out of the country, they worry about that. But there is a reckoning happening, and I believe that sometime in the next, in Q4 or Q1, there will be a workforce immigration bill. You've heard about the 1Bs and the $100,000 fees for those industries. Maybe your own individual industries are affected by those. We're talking about 2Bs. We're talking about the people that work out here on these grounds, these people that pull crab meat, all the people that work in the chicken farms and places like that we need a good economy. And one of the things that I want to drive home here is that Trump is telling everyone, and this factors into the shutdown. He is telling everyone, you may have seen the Wall Street Journal article 5 days ago, wait till next year, okay? Because this economy, this president, his team are putting everything into 2026. There's a very good reason, or distinct reason, or known reason for that, and that's the midterm elections in 2026. I'm going to talk about that in a second. The point is that I believe via tariffs and via all other economic levers that can be pulled by an administration, this White House is going to put all of its chips in on 2026 and getting the economy humming. Part of that is workforce. We need people working in all these jobs to have a healthy economy. So watch this space. Tax policy. We all know about no tax on tips. We have found this to be not a non-issue for the private club industry, but something that none of the clubs have really seemed super worried about. In other words, talk to the caddy people. My guys have been getting tips. I don't know if they report them or not, and we assume that's going to continue. And most, maybe you've moved to a service charge model. So you're working with your finance committee and your accountant, your comptroller, or whomever, about how you're going to navigate that. But the goal here is to be more open to people taking the deduction than closed. And I don't think there's going to be a lot of enforcement on this. The guy said something on the stage in Las Vegas last year. Here we are. I don't know if you're hearing from your employees about it, but no tax on tips was probably the biggest tax piece that we were watching. In the big beautiful bill. Same with overtime. And I assume if people have questions about that, NCA has put out alerts. We put out one-pagers. We are here to answer questions. We're still in the rule-making phase of this, but the tips are going to be deductible calendar 24. I'm sorry, calendar 25 for this year. So this is going to be active for this year. So you need to be in a position where you're prepared to tell your employees, if you're a tipping club, how that's all going to pan out. The caddies, caddy organizations have not seemed too worried about it, unless it's like a large outing where there's a master caddy account. Pinehurst was specifically mentioned where there's 25 grand put in for a 2-day event, and how they disperse that and how that's reported. Another thing that we are trying to work on, this is that time of year where we all get our employee holiday fund. In my case, I get a opt-out, which, God help you if you opt out and are willing to send in that letter. I guess the juice is worth a squeeze on sending those stamps out to folks to say, hey, if you don't want to be a part of it, go ahead and tell us no. And how are those viewed as bonuses? Are those viewed as tips? How are those viewed? It's a question that some people have had, and we don't have a final answer yet, but hopefully that is something that we are going to be able to put out as an organization that provides some guidance to our clubs very, very quickly. Maybe you already made the decision and you're comfortable with it, and so go forth and conquer. I want to mention that last bullet down there on the bottom, because this goes back to what I said about us not necessarily being beloved. In a lot of ways, in a lot of federal definitions, private clubs are included on what's called the sin list. So we're right up there with strip clubs, casinos, liquor stores, vape shops, all that kind of stuff. We're lumped in with those groups and have been for quite some time. So whether it comes to federal disaster recovery funds, we're lumped in with them on those. Tax exempt, let's see, the bill that Ms. Tenney has, she's from up in the Finger Lakes, it removes golf courses and country clubs from the so-called sin list, allowing them to benefit from tax exempt financing and related incentives. So just remember, when you're thinking about clubs, look at what we do here. We do all these great things. We employ all these people. We buy all this food and beverage and all kinds of stuff. Yeah, we still have a PR problem. And I think everyone in this room, if you really look in the mirror, understand why. But it's not something that we just sort of accept and move on. And it's not something that we're accepting and moving on. So tax on tips, overtime, and the tax space. On the labor side, I mentioned it. The really important thing there, just when I mentioned the 180 departure from the two administrations, if you look at that first bullet, there's a 10-to-1 executive order that Trump put out with respect to regulations. If you want to put in a reg, you got to pull down 10. I mean, that's incredible. And it's probably not happening perfectly in that practice, but that's the mindset of this administration. You want to put in a reg, you want to regulate something, give me 10 that can go away for the same reason. Again, 2026 economy, 2026 economy. Healthcare, let me skip over that. All right, everybody recognize 16 at Sleepy. Is Mr. Rusk here? There he is. Hey, you came to our conference last year. We'll talk a little bit about that. I do want to say that from a bipartisan standpoint, what year would this have been?
2018.
That was 2018, all right. But my favorite thing about doing these presentations is one of the girls that works for me is like a militant Antifa person, and I make her put together these club association things, and she just hates it, and I love it. So anyway, permitting reform is somewhere that is bipartisan. I think what the Democratic Party found out was that the infrastructure bill and the IRA that was passed under President Biden, it took too long for those things to get implemented because of their own permitting rules, both at the state level. So I can't do anything about the state level, California, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, but I can do something for you at the federal level. And so permitting regs are being lessened. And so we want shovels in the ground. This president wants shovels in the ground. He also wants to cancel stuff that was in the IRA, and that's happening particularly up in this region, as you know, particularly if you live near the water and you are interested in windmills and wind power. So this is a big issue that is, again, has bipartisan agreement, which is let's stop with the 7 to 8 to 10 years it takes to permit things when our competitors, particularly in China, can do it in a day. And we sit around doing things for 10 years. I mentioned waters in the United States. If any of you have been on your Greens Committee or your Grounds Committee or worked closely with your superintendent, you've probably heard about this one. This is how a body of water is defined. And the original definition of it, which came out in the Obama administration, is very, very broad, right? A creek, a little pond, things of that nature. And so we've been battling that back and forth. So you go Obama, Trump, Biden, Trump. It just has been swinging back and forth over whether or not the Waters of the United States legislation is going to, regulation is going to do anything. And right now we are in a pullback mode and will be for the next 3 years. So I don't want to tell people, don't worry about it. But certainly if you're working with a contractor, you're getting bids, things of that nature, you are likely hearing that things can happen more quickly. Gotta hurry. This one I put up just because it's fun. This was actually a big debate, big argument happening, and it was Trump's idea. And I don't know if your club talked about this. This is a big issue. This is a big issue. You can get another hour of daylight. Why wouldn't clubs want to be for that? Well, there are reasons for it. You want your people to come to work in the dark. You want their kids to go to school in the dark. Things of that nature. So this was another, I think, sort of flippant, off the cuff remark that the president made. And lo and behold, we're having hearings on it. We're talking about it, and everyone is afraid to admit that they don't really understand which one is which. Daylight savings is the one in the spring. So we would get rid of springing forward. I'm reading a book about World War II. They did double daylight savings during World War II over there. They did 2 hours for a time being. This has sort of gone away, but it was an interesting one to talk about within the club space. In the recreational industries in general. I don't know if folks have opinions on it, but anyway, this was, I think the Florida people wanted it. People up in this part of the world were kind of like, well, that's a lot of darkness for us in the mornings, so let's just, let's put a pen in this one. All right, bad hair, don't care. What I was saying about this president is, and it's almost as if we should say that each president, every 4 years, they should take a 4-year break and then get to come back, because they realize a lot of things and they come back and they do things differently. Sometimes for the betterment, sometimes for the worse. But this president in particular, if it wasn't such a nice club on a morning, if this was maybe at the reception, I might use the F word, but he doesn't care. He doesn't give a blank about traditional Republican constituencies. He doesn't care about, hey, Mr. President, Pharma's been with the Republican Party for 50 years. I don't care. Hey, Mr. President, farmers and ranchers, they're friends of the Republican Party. I know. I don't care. Got to do some things here and there. I'm doing some tough things. And so it's amazing to work with a White House, one that the president is so hands-on, again, for better or worse, but he has his staff at the ready whenever he's negotiating with anybody to just come in, whisper something to him, and then he'll just say, boom, and he'll hit you with it when he's in a negotiation. And that's not like any other White House has ever operated. There are memos and rungs of bureaucracy and staffers, and all this stuff comes up from here to here to here to here, and maybe it gets to the president. This is just boom. It's like a hotline to Steve Miller. Steve Miller whispers it to Susie Wiles. Susie Wiles whispers it to the president, and he goes, boom, let's put out a tweet. And I'm not being completely hyperbolic when I say that. To be a staffer in this White House, it must be incredible to know that something you're working on that maybe even obscure could all of a sudden be elevated in 1 hour, and the next thing you know, the guy's on Fox News talking about it. So, first term, when he was poking foreign leaders, it was sort of like he was whispering to them, hey, I'm going to blow you up, you blow me up, it'll both be good for us back home with our constituencies. This time around, he's saying, no, let's get into this thing. I want something from you. This is very simple. I'm redoing all the deals, and I'm going to make money. We're not giving people USAID. We're closing down foreign funding. All of our contributions to the rest of the world with respect to just contributions for programs. He's saying, no, those stop, and we're going to start investing, and we're going to start getting a return on that investment. Makes sense, but it certainly has upset the apple cart quite a bit. So again, just remember with this guy, he's what, almost 80? He can't run again, don't worry, he cannot run again. He's not gonna run again, it's been in the news again last couple of days. So this one, if Mamdani wins, the GOP is gonna overplay its hand and talk about the socialist, communist, whatever, in New York, completely overplay its hand, and so that will backfire. They probably even want it to happen in some ways going into 2026. They probably actually want to see a bunch of policies that they'll be able to say to people in red states, look at this, look at what you get if you go with the Democrat. This is what happens. So there's probably a big part of the political establishment, at least on the consultant side, rubbing their hands together, saying this is going to be great when he wins, and we can go after him. The New Jersey race seems to be, the only big, huge news story here is if Mr. Ciccarelli wins. Out of all those four faces, I think Mamdani's going to win. Anyway, if Ciccarelli wins, that is a message. That is a massive message if New Jersey elects a Republican governor. That the Democrats fold the next day, I think, on the shutdown. And they have to reassess a lot of things if they lose that New Jersey governorship. Look, it's happened. Governor Christie, that was not that long ago. So, also from the club perspective, I just like calling him Chick. It's kind of fun. So anyway, a couple of big things to watch here from the national perspective. Very local to this room, but from the national perspective, if Ciccarelli wins, wow, that's going to be a big kick in the shins to a party that seems to be a little bit down as it is right now. I'm building towards this, midterms. The president cares so much about the 2026 midterms. This will be the final referendum on him. It won't be on the ballot, but it will be a referendum because history shows, and we all probably know this, midterm elections, the first term of the president, party in power gets eviscerated in the House and Senate, right? Gets killed. His ego says, if I can hold on to the House and or the Senate and break history, that is a referendum on me. His final election is next year. Whoever's on the ballot for Republicans in 2028, he'll say, I don't care what happened to me, he'll care. But if that person loses or that party loses, hey, it wasn't me. It wasn't me. See, I'm the only guy that can do this. But 2026, he also knows if the House flips, he gets impeached on day one. The point here is that the 2026 economy is so important to him. 401ks, manufacturing investments, both domestic and from foreign enemies. People are talking about, the president's going around, he's making all these deals with the foreign leaders right now. Yeah, right. There's nothing real about these things. There's no real commitment. There's not a contract. BS. The president is telling each of those leaders, both from the corporate side and on the elected side of foreign governments, I need them now. I want them now. I want these investments in the country now. I want you to buy land. We're going to permit it quickly. I want you to put them in red states or swing states. And I want you to put them there, and we're going to be building and digging in 2026. So this is very, very real to him. Your 401ks, tariffs. We're all feeling the pinch of tariffs, whether in your private businesses or at your club level. I think those are going to go away. Either the Supreme Court's going to rule and they go away, which, by the way, he'll kind of like. He just won't admit it. He won't say it, but he's whispering it off camera. They get rid of the tariffs. At least I didn't do it. I tried to do it, and then they go away. Or he starts to cut deals with people, pulling back and getting more and more, less and less of a burden on entities, and AKA taxpayers and consumers. I want to talk specifically really quickly about this. The youth movement in the Democratic Party is centered in the northeast part of the United States. You have longtime members of Congress, Democrat senior members of the House from New Jersey, New York, Connecticut, Massachusetts, that are feeling the heat from a younger generation. This is ground zero for where the primaries on the Democratic side are going to happen next year with people that are 30, 35, 40, 45 seems young compared to some of these folks that have been in office for a long, long time. But this is where the primaries are happening, the youth movement, and getting rid of kind of the old, maybe this has happened in clubs, right? There's a new bunch of young whippersnappers. We want to do this, we want to do this. We're going to kick out those old guys. We want this for the next generation of the club. And then they get there and they realize, yeah, it's not that easy to do. You can't just do it, we don't have money. But anyway, I did want to, since I'm here geographically, point out that this area of the country is ground zero for the youth movement within the Democratic Party and primaries to longtime incumbents. Again, I talked quickly about sort of how Trump affects us as an industry. I do feel like if ever we had some sort of massive threat, I won't say existential, but a massive threat, I think that he would be helpful to whatever it was we were doing. Anybody seen these ads? They're running around New Jersey and New York, stealing from the Billy Joel song. Ironically, that was about the working class, the people that are leaving New York and New Jersey in a lot of cases, or blue states. Probably are people more of means that are going to Florida and other places, but maybe working class people are moving down to red states where there's better work. But you're actually having ads run in your states trying to convince your governments to pull back on taxation and regulation. Don't know if it's working, but you may see one of those when you're driving by. Lastly, I want to plug our conference. Mr. Russ can tell you about it. It's awesome. This year's is going to be down at Ocean Reef Club. Jack Nicklaus is scheduled to appear at it. And the main point of the club association, one of the things that we're really trying to do, because your clubs are represented by the GMs at our association, the GMs come, we are really trying to get into the boardroom. We are trying to get club presidents or club chairmen to come with their GMs, or somebody from the board, somebody senior, to come with their GM, come to club conference. It's great networking. It's very informational. We have a good time. You meet great people, and you probably are able to set up a game or two. So encourage everybody to come down to Florida in April. It's shoulder season. You know, when your club managers from Florida are finally getting to come up for air, and your club managers from the colder climates are not in full bore, busy as hell Memorial Day weekend kickoff. Questions? Let's talk. Let's get into any questions that we have. Otherwise, I can keep us on schedule. It's been great presenting. I've enjoyed being here with y'all. Luckily, everybody seemed fairly caffeinated, and those phones aren't going off too badly with the issues of the day. I know I've got to deal with a 9-year-old girl's Halloween costume at some point today. Probably a tariff involved, and it not getting to me from Amazon. Anybody want to talk about anything? Any questions? Want to throw anything out? All right. Oh.
No tips.
Yeah.
Taxes.
No tips.
Has anybody been looking at the impact on Social Security?
I'm sure they have, but it hasn't been us. Are you worried about it from a revenue perspective, or?
I'm not worried.
Well, I know. I'm sorry.
The funding of Social Security.
Yeah. Hey, that's a whole other thing. If we want to talk about entitlements, massive issue. I do think the president, after those midterms, he's going to do two things. He's going to, there's an old Eminem song, Cleaning Out My Closet. He's going to fix a lot of things that I had hoped President Biden, given his age and experience, might have taken on because he knows their problems. Unfortunately, that didn't happen. I think entitlements is one of the big ones. The president is just on the way out because he doesn't care. He doesn't have to get reelected. He is going to do some things on the way out on entitlements. He's also going to do some things with respect to what I would call consistent thorns in the side of us from an international perspective. You're actually seeing that with Venezuela right now. I wouldn't be surprised if North Korea gets dealt with in some way during the second term on the way out, so that no president has to deal with it again. But with respect to entitlements, obviously a huge problem. People are trying to focus on the debt and the deficit. At least Republicans are talking a decent game, but you can cut discretionary spending all you want, and it's not going to do a lick of good until we deal with Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security. You can cut defense, you can cut anything. The massive part of the pie, 2/3 of it, is our entitlements. All right, thanks.